If you've read about Focus or watched any of my videos, you've probably seen me talk about speed, performance, optimization, this type of thing. And you've probably seen this, this topic come up with other WordPress themes, plugins, things like that. But I want to talk about, what does this actually mean? What does it mean to actually have speed and performance on your website? Like, you know, when you've been on a site that's fast and snappy and it's got all the right stuff. Let's talk about what that stuff is. It all starts with setting up your environment, and we'll look at that first. So the first thing with setting up your environment is setting up stuff like Google Analytics, domain name verification, stuff that says, hey, I'm a website, come look at me, look at my stuff, put me in your search index, that type of thing. And the most fundamental aspect of this is setting up Google Analytics. Focus gives you a very easy way to set this up. All you got to do is input your Google Analytics user ID, hit save, and boom, it gets integrated. Now, you could use a plugin to do this with your WordPress site if you want, but there's a big caveat here. The caveat is this. We're going to look at the source of this web page right here. Boom. And here's an HTML source. Now, Google has guidelines for how you need to implement Google Analytics and where you need to put the code on your site. And the current recommendation is to have this way at the top of your document head. It needs to be one of the first things that appears. And the thing is, the way WordPress themes are built, Google changes these specifications all the time, and it's just not easy to get the code in exactly the right location. Especially if you're using a plugin, you literally cannot get the code to go in the right location unless you do some highly technical stuff yourself. That's not great. Focus is designed so that when the ground changes, when the quicksand starts to move, your site can be adaptive to that. So like if the code goes in one place now and Google changes that later, Focus will automatically change this stuff for you and make sure that your Google Analytics code, for example, is always in the exact right place. It goes at the top of the HTML document head, and that's where Focus is going to put it after you add that stuff to your site. Super easy. You don't have to think about this type of thing. You've just got an integration that is absolutely 100% up to whatever specifications Google has set forth. That's nice. That's a bonus. All right. Next thing is domain name verification. This is a pretty common thing these days. Google gives you meta verification if you're not using Google Analytics. If you are using Analytics, you don't have to do this. Bing, another search engine, also gives you verification, and Pinterest has domain name verification as well. This stuff is all right here for you to do. You don't have to do anything technical to integrate it. You just use whatever code they give you, paste it in here, hit save. Your site is verified. No problem. So that's kind of the first step in the SEO speed optimization puzzle, is just identifying your site. This stuff is super easy with Focus. The next thing is actually it's your HTML. It's the way, the code underneath your web pages. This has a big effect on how optimized and fast and streamlined your website is. You don't have to know a lot about HTML here to kind of get the picture of what you're looking at, but you're looking at an HTML document source that is very, very streamlined and very organized. Okay, so this, the stuff under the hood is not a jumbled mess in Focus. It is all extremely detailed and extremely precise for this very reason, to facilitate speed and to make your website as high performance as possible. You start with a good base, and then when you add stuff on, things don't get screwed up as badly because you're starting with a rock solid foundation and you branch outward from there. So that's basic HTML optimization. There's another piece of this puzzle, and that is it's called structured data in HTML. So search engines love this. It is a way to convey even more information about the stuff that's on your web page through the code of your web page itself. You don't need to know this stuff specifically. You just need to know that Focus already includes all this stuff for you. Stuff like date published, date modified. This is all code language stuff that enhances, it gives some richness to your web page. Search engines want you to have this stuff. Focus includes this stuff, gives you some markup schema. If you're familiar with markup schema, you can look that up. Or if you're not familiar with it, you can look it up. All this stuff is included, and you don't have to think about it. It's all set up and optimized for you. And then the next piece of the puzzle, we've got things like JavaScript and things like CSS. Let's talk about CSS first. CSS is the style language that makes your site look the way it looks. With most WordPress themes, CSS files, especially since the advent of responsive design, CSS files have just gotten bigger and bigger and bigger. And obviously, the smaller your CSS assets are, the faster your site can load. Anything you load that's big is going to take extra time to load, and therefore it'd be best if you just had as little as possible to load on every web page. The Focus CSS file, when it's fully compiled, is only 21.5 kilobytes. And you can actually tweak it and make it smaller than that if you want. That's just a little tidbit for pros out there. It's only 21.5 kilobytes. By modern standards, this is tiny. It's almost non-existent. So Focus is doing you a solid there by starting with a very streamlined foundation. I've put a premium on performance and just not having any waste. I don't want a bunch of stuff on your style sheet that you're not going to use or that only speaks to a feature that 1% of the people using Focus are ever going to use. No. We start with the basics and we branch out from there. It's super important. Also, the placement of the CSS file. Pages appear to render faster, which is, the user's perception of performance is more important than whatever some performance metric is going to say. If your pages look and feel fast, your website is fast. So one way to make your website seem faster is to have the CSS served way up high in the document head. Now, I'm just educating you on that fact here, and I want to point out that if you look at other WordPress themes document sources, the CSS is usually way down at the bottom. There's a ton of legacy WordPress reasons, plugin compatibility reasons. There's lots of reasons why this choice has been made. But the bottom line is that is not a performance first choice. What you are looking at here with Focus is a performance first environment. This has all been designed to put speed and performance first because these are the most important, most critical aspects of your website moving forward. You got to have fast pages on mobile devices. Search engines are moving to mobile first indices, meaning that they judge your site based on how it performs on mobile devices. It's critical to have speed. This environment is set up to facilitate that. The next thing is JavaScript optimization. Plugins. So a lot of plugins will load up JavaScript on your site. And that's not great because we don't want to have a lot of JavaScript on our site. The reason we don't want to have a lot of JavaScript, it's not that JavaScript is bad. It's not. It's just that it's more stuff to load. And the way JavaScript loads, it is considered a render blocking resource, especially if the JavaScript appears up in the document head here. That whole script would have to load before you see the page load. That's why we want to get into this. That's why things like asynchronous JavaScript loading is a topic in optimization and performance circles now, because if the JavaScript is loaded asynchronously, it does not block the loading of the page and makes the perception of speed greater. So we do want to have JavaScript optimization. The way Focus addresses this is just by not having any JavaScript in the base Focus design. It doesn't include so many themes. I don't want to call it any names, but I've just worked with one a couple months ago that loaded up, I think it was like 800 kilobytes of JavaScript code to do fancy features and stuff. And it was loading 800 kilobytes. Can't even imagine how huge this is. On every single page of a website. It's just insanity. This is monstrous JavaScript file that included like jQuery and everything else in there. That is obviously not the way we build a fast website. We don't load a bunch of junk resources and a bunch of crap, basically. That stuff has no place in a foundation. Focus is the foundation for your website, and as such, it does not include any junk that you do not need. Let's see here. And also, with JavaScript optimization, another topic there is the placement of the scripts themselves. And I already kind of mentioned this, but you basically two places where you're going to put scripts: in the head of your document or in the footer. Focus makes it very easy to add stuff to your site. Specifically, if you want to add some footer scripts, there's a place to do that. This is super easy. You're not going to need to use code like hooks and filter WordPress code in a custom functions file or anything like that to add this stuff to your site. No, there's a simple place to just paste the stuff that you have, and it will appear in the proper location to preserve the speed and performance of your website. It's great. Another aspect of optimization that's very important is atoning for some of the sins that WordPress commits on your site. Sins that you may not want committed, but WordPress didn't ask you. They just went ahead and did this. Okay, so here's two of them that that I have dealt with and that Focus gets rid of, so you don't have to. Number one is, or Focus gives you the ability to. It doesn't do this by default, but you can easily turn this stuff off, which I recommend you do. And that is, number one is some script. It's 2.4 kilobytes of scripts and stuff that WordPress serves on every page of your site for emoji support. Now, the thing about this that's funny is now almost every rendering device, so like every phone, every computer, every operating system, everything has native emoji support now. So there really is no more need for this script, but that hasn't stopped WordPress. They're still dumping 2.4 kilobytes on every single page of your site. I won't allow 2.4 kilobytes on my pages. I don't think you should allow it on yours. We can nuke those by clicking one box in Focus, no problem. The next sin that WordPress commits, this really bad one, this one came with Gutenberg. This is a little surprise they snuck in the back door here. And the default Gutenberg styles that load with WordPress add 33 kilobytes of CSS to every page of your website. I already said the Focus style sheet is only 21.5 kilobytes. So this WordPress one that you're not even going to use hardly, these Gutenberg styles, is 150% larger than all the CSS you need for Focus, and it's of arguable usefulness, and so I recommend we just get rid of it. Focus makes it easy to get rid of that too. You don't have to add any code or do anything like that. You click a box and you're done. So that's another part of the performance and optimization puzzle. If you use WordPress, you got to get rid of stuff that you don't need. Focus makes it easy to get rid of all that stuff, so you don't have to do anything technical. No hooks, no filters, no custom functions, none of that garbage, no technical stuff. You just click boxes, you just remove stuff you don't want. It's super easy, it's intuitive. This is the way it should be. The next thing, image optimization. Now this one's on you. Focus doesn't do this, but any images you add to your website need to be optimized. They need to be stripped of what's called EXIF data. And there's plugins to do this. One's called WP Smush. I use that on some sites. I think there's quite a few other optimization plugins. There's websites you can go to upload your pictures, and it'll allow you to download the optimized versions of those. This is just another piece of the optimization puzzle, though. I want to be thorough here and let you guys know, like, speed and performance, what does it all mean? What is all implied by that? This is part of the deal. So making sure you don't load unoptimized images is a big deal, a very big deal. And then last but not least is caching. Focus doesn't do this either. Caching is a finishing touch sort of thing, right? So a lot of people have used caching, especially in the WordPress ecosystem. Caching is considered this thing that like papers over. You commit tons of performance and optimization sins, and you're somehow atoning for all these sins by applying caching to your website. It doesn't work that way. Caching is better if your base is better. If your foundation is not as good, then your caching is not going to be as good. There's all these downstream effects. You do a great job, your caching, you add the caching layer, you're doing a really great job. But if you don't do a great job and you add the caching layer, your results from the caching are it's just okay. Again, that's a separate thing. I mentioned the image optimization, the caching to be thorough. Those are parts of the speed and performance equation, but they're ones that you kind of manage on your own, as you manage your site over time. Focus does all the rest of it for you. You're going to have the best HTML source on the planet. This is absolutely the best HTML that's ever been output from a WordPress website, and it's not close. You've got all the stuff you need, none of the stuff you don't, and control over the little bits and pieces along the way. And so that's what it means when I say that, Focus is optimized for performance. It's optimized, for speed. It's optimized for mobile devices. That's because everything that's not needed has been gotten rid of. And that's why Focus is going to work for you, because we're not working with any junk, not wading through any extra stuff. You just got the basics, and you can rock out with them.